Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Jaya Jashodanandana, Jaya Braja Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Jaya Jashodanandana, Jaya
We are ready.
Jaya Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Shri Radha Madhav ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Sorry for technical difficulties at my end. We appreciate for the patience, and thank you for coming and taking up service like this. It's very important for people like me to get some knowledge and wisdom from you, great devotees. So today we're going to hear from continuation of our Bhagavad Gita chapter summaries. So we completed two chapters, 1 and 2. So today Gopal Hari Prabhu is going to summarize chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita. And little introduction about Gopal Hari Prabhu. His Grace Gopal Hari Prabhu and his good wife Devi Murti Mataji, the two children, Sita and Balaram, they recently moved to Naperville. We are so fortunate to have their association. Gopal Hari Prabhu is taking up the Joe Dunham Distinguished Professorship in Ethics at Aurora University. It's very close to us. So, and Prabhu, he's the author of Maya in the Bhagavad Purana, Human Suffering and Divine Play, published by Oxford University Press. He serves as the editor for the Journal of Hindu Christian Studies, JHCS. He has been serving as a member of ISKCON's Shastric Advisory Council. Prabhu also completed his Doctor of Philosophy in Religious Studies and MSc in Science and Religion from the University of Oxford, UK. Before studying at Oxford, Prabhu completed his bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering from Boise State University. So you can see how Prabhu was materially also so much educated as well as in spirituality. So we want to hear from Prabhu so many good things. I personally heard from Prabhu. He is very scholarly as well as very devoted. And whenever he does any service, I can see that the humility in him. And even though he is at that state, he comes to our level and speak to us. That's very inspiring. And Prabhu, we want to hear from you, the Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. Please, if you have any presentation, feel free to share the screen and take out, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here amongst all of you. Thank you for the very generous introduction. But personally, we are just endeavoring to advance in Krishna consciousness and make some spiritual advancement. So we need your blessings for that. And thank you, Prabhu, for all the service that you do for ISKCON Naperville, one of them being running the Sunday Feast program every single week of the year, which is not an easy task. So today, as Prabhu mentioned, we are discussing chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. And the effort is to give a summary of this chapter, which is very difficult to do because Krishna's words are unlimited. Krishna's words are so powerful and so wonderful that just one of his verses, just one chapter, people have been studying since thousands of years, and still they're unable to understand his divine instructions. But we will make an attempt to try to understand the message of chapter 3 so that Krishna may be pleased with us. So before we start a reading or a discussion on the Bhagavad Gita, we always say one mantra, and you can please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 And I'll also recite a few prayers to the spiritual master, which actually appear in the Bhagavad Gita in the introduction on page 1. I'll share it on the screen here so all of you can see it. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Mayam Vandeham Shri Rupam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Rapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just one question. What time are we supposed to end? Should I end the class?
It's 6:20, Prabhu.
6:20.
But you can go a little lower, and we can take question answers after that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So as I mentioned, Krishna's words are unlimited, but for our benefit, he speaks in a very succinct way. So this chapter is called Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga is, I think, one of the most popular themes in of the Bhagavad Gita. If you ask anyone who knows something about the Gita, they'll say, oh, the Gita teaches us how to be a karma yogi. And it's like a buzzword, karma yogi. So what is karma yoga? We'll be talking about this, but in this chapter, Krishna discusses three main themes. He has three main learning outcomes, so to say. The first one is that in the first 9 texts, Krishna discusses which is better, renunciation of work or work in devotion. So in chapter 2, and this is the context of chapter 3, as they say, every text has a context, and we cannot take a text out of the context. That's not fair. So what is the context of chapter 3? That's chapter 2. And in chapter 2, Krishna talks about Buddhi Yoga. He talks about the science of the soul, the science of the Atma, the self. He talks about Jnana, about knowledge, and renunciation, that we're not these material bodies, we're the spirit soul. So Arjuna, after hearing chapter 2, he thinks, if renunciation is the goal, then why is Krishna wanting me to engage in this very troublesome battle? Why should I work and act as a soldier if the goal is renunciation? After all, Arjuna wanted to give up the battle to begin with. This is his first proposal and first preference. He tells Krishna, I do not want to fight. He has this beautiful verse in chapter 1 where he says that all of these, so many of these people who are arrayed on the battlefield, who are in the opposing army, they are my superiors, like Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya. They are my elders. Even if they have come with a bad intent in mind, it is better if with arms in their hands they kill me rather than I kill them, because they are still worshipable for me. They are my, Dronacharya was the one who taught him how to put the arrow on the bow. And he's thinking, how can I use that same bow and arrow and kill Dronacharya? So Arjuna, he's a soft-hearted warrior. And Krishna's attracted by his soft-heartedness. This is actually his qualification. Prabhupada writes in the purport to this verse, he says that this is Arjuna's qualification. Why does Krishna speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? It's because of his soft-heartedness. Krishna had so many people to speak it to, but he chose Arjuna because of his mood of renunciation, his mood of compassion, his mood of being a very kind and simple soul. So Arjuna prefers not to fight. And Krishna has now just confused him. He said you should fight, but then he said that the ultimate goal is renunciation. So if renunciation is the goal, Arjuna asks, why should I work? Why should I act in this battle? So this is the first question that he asks. And Krishna answers this in the first 9 verses. He explains why Arjuna should fight, even though renunciation is considered very good. Then the second part, which is the main, you could say, part of this chapter, is Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Varna Ashram, and Bhakti Yoga. So a lot. It's a lot there. And we'll try to unpack what these words mean. But Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas and Krishna himself explain to us that Karma Yoga, in its most perfected form, is Bhakti Yoga. And therefore, Karma Yoga leads to Bhakti Yoga. And the final section of this chapter gives Arjuna a warning. It tells him that you should perform Karma Yoga, Don't renounce the world. Act in Krishna consciousness. Act for me. But when you act, because now you're not renouncing, and when you fight, be aware of lust and anger. So balanced, so nice, so practical what Krishna is saying. So first he says, don't just renounce the world, act in Krishna consciousness, perform karma yoga, offer the results of your work to God. But then if you're going to do that and you're going to act in this world, there'll be many things in this world that will make you lusty. In the course of acting for God, we'll also get some wealth, and we might want some more wealth, or we might want to, something very wonderful or powerful, or a powerful position. So don't be lusty after these things. And then things will also go wrong. There'll be very provoking situations, very difficult situations. In such situations, don't lose your cool. Don't become angry. So these are the three main themes of this chapter. And there's 5 main themes of the Bhagavad Gita, as many of you may know. The Gita talks about the Atma, the self. It talks about Prakriti, or nature. It talks about karma, or action, Kala, time, and Ishvara, God, right? These 5 things. So in this chapter, Krishna is specifically talking about karma. Now, before we talk about karma yoga, we have to talk about what is karma. Karma, in the most general sense, the word itself just means action. So we generally tend to connect karma with the law of karma. That is, in one context, that is its meaning. But the word karma itself literally means just action. And karma as a law is the law of action and reaction. So karma just means action. So the first thing is we must understand is, what is action? What is bad action? What is good action? And that is the law of karma. And this world, in this world, we are bound. We are in this cycle of reincarnation. Reincarnation means what? Reincarnation is the cycle of rebirth. As Krishna told us in the 2nd chapter, right? Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra namohyati. That in this life also, presently, we are changing bodies. And this is the shocking part. We think, I'm such and such. I'm this person. But we already changed bodies so many times. Medical science tells us today that every 7 years, we get a new body, a brand new body. It's changed gradually, so it doesn't seem that way. And every 10 years, every single cell in our body changes, including our brain cells. We have brand new brain cells also every 10 years. So in this life, we have changed bodies so many times. And if we have a new body every 10 years, then the question is, what is us? Just like I ask sometimes my students, I show them this picture and ask them, how many bodies are here? And so they'll count, they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, up to this point, 13. So say 13 bodies are here. How many people are here? And they say one person is here. So this is the argument that Krishna is giving for reincarnation. There's 13 bodies, but there's one person. That means the body is different than the person. The body is just a dress. The body is just a dress. It changes. But the person remains the
Prabhu, you're
same.
breaking.
So
We're not able to hear you clearly. I think there is network issue.
okay. I'm breaking up. Okay. So let me just fix it 1 second. Give me 1 second. Okay, Prabhu, is this better?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So Krishna is arguing that just as we are changing bodies in this life, we are already changing bodies. What we call death is just a sudden change of body, right? When the car cannot change anymore, it cannot be fixed anymore, then all of a sudden, it has to be replaced. And that is what we call the change of body. So now the question is, what is karma? This is what reincarnation was. What is karma? Well, karma is the process or the law that determines which body do I go into. So karma is the process that determines that if we're going to change bodies, which body are we going to go into? Karma in its most general sense means action, but the law of karma refers to action and reaction. So different ways of saying karma is what goes around comes around. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And another way to describe this law of karma is Newton's third law of motion. What's Newton's third law of motion? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this world is perfectly just. People say, is there justice in this world? This world is perfectly just. Just like there are universal physical laws, the Gita is telling us there's also universal moral laws. If I put good out in the world, eventually that goodness will come back to me. In the same way, if I put bad out in the world, eventually that will come back to me. So this is the universal law, moral law, the law of karma. And there's different ways of understanding this law of karma. Just like the internet is filled with different discussions on karma and different, philosophies. So karma quote number 46 says, "You are free to make any decision you wish, but you are not free from the consequences of that decision." Right? So we have freedom. Karma presupposes freedom. Therefore, karma makes sense. So we're free to make any decision we want, but we are not free from the consequences of that decision. Wayne Dyer, he's a famous motivational speaker. He says, how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. Right? So very powerful statement. How people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. So now connecting reincarnation and karma, what are two factors that determine our next life? There's actually two factors, not just karma, but there's another factor also. And both of these factors are very important, very key in determining what our next life will be. One factor is what we deserve, and that is called karma. But another factor is what we desire. What we deserve is our karma. I do bad, I'll get bad back. I do good, I'll get good back. But also another factor that Krishna has made this material world in such a way is what we desire. So our desires also lead us to another life, to another body. And these desires are very important, and especially the desire that we have at the time of death. That desire is most essential or most important because that is our strongest desire. And whatever desire we have at the time of death will lead us to our next body. Now, these two things, deserving and desiring, determine our next body. So how does this work? Well, what we deserve tempers or limits what we desire. So let's say someone throughout their life, they've done skydiving, right? They're a very good skydiver. and they jump off of planes and off of cliffs and they skydive. And so at the time of their death, they have the desire to become, they have the desire that in their next life they should fly. They have the desire to fly because they're just, done parachuting is the most enjoyable thing in their life. So their final desire is to fly. Now, the parachuter, he thinks that, well, what he sort of imagines is that in his next life, he'll become like an angel who flies around and doesn't need all this parachute equipment. But, this man hasn't been so good. He robbed a few banks. He punched quite a few people. He didn't act very nicely. So rather than becoming an angel, he ends up becoming a pigeon. So the desire to fly is still fulfilled, but because his activity was not so good, because what he deserved was not so good, that desire to fly was tempered to become a pigeon, a regular bird. And he can fly around, but not like an angel. So what we deserve and what we desire are these two things that determine our next life. Another example we can give is karma is like a bank balance, right? It's the amount of sukriti that we accumulate. So at a certain point in life, or certain time, it's in winter time, it's miserably cold here. So we have the desire that I want to go on a vacation. And we think it'll be really nice to go to Hawaii for a vacation. But then we look at our bank balance and we haven't worked too hard. We've blown away money. So we see that in our bank balance, there's only $200. So you say, well, $200 won't take me to Hawaii. So instead of going to Hawaii, we instead go from Chicago to Indianapolis, right? Just a short distance down. At least it's a little warmer there. And we still go on a vacation, but that vacation is limited or tempered by what we deserved. So this is how the cycle of reincarnation and karma works. We are told that there are 8,400,000 species of life. All of them are produced by Krishna. Krishna says, Aham bija pradapita. All these different species of life are there. However, this human life, this Manushya Janma, is very, very special. Why? Because it's only in the human life that we can gain good or bad karma. The other lives are simply burning off our past karma, good or bad. So Prabhupada gives the example that if a dog crosses the street on a red light, no one gives the dog a ticket. But if a human being crosses the street at a red light, the human being gets a ticket. Why? Because the human life is one of higher intelligence. The human life is one of responsibility. And if we act badly, we get the reaction. If we act well, we get the good reaction. The animal species don't. The animals are simply burning off the bad karma, or the soul in the animal form is simply suffering the reaction of the activities that the soul did in his human form of life. So therefore, this human life is very, very special. It's very rare. After many, many lifetimes, we've had the opportunity to have this human life. And we should not waste it in just the things that the animals do, because we'll get many opportunities for that, or we have had many opportunities. This human life is meant for self-realization, for realizing the truth. And if we waste even a moment of this human life, it is the greatest loss. Because this is the life. Human life is the path out of this material world. It's the place where we can break out of this material world. Once we are into the animal species of life, we have to wait again for millions of lifetimes until we come back to human life. So many people, especially from India, they say, see, our religion is very good because we believe in karma and you always get a second chance. And what they're saying is correct. It is a very nice philosophy because we get a second chance. But we should still be afraid of our karma. We should think before we act, because our second chance might come after 1,000,000 lifetimes. And do we want to wait 1,000,000 lifetimes? And the fact is, animals are pretty much suffering. Their life is so much suffering. They're always in anxiety. They're out in the cold, in the snow. There's no surety that we will be a dog born in America. We could be a dog born anywhere and not have that Porsche to ride in. So this is a very rare opportunity, and we should not waste it. So the goal of reincarnation and karma is not to keep reincarnating, but to stop reincarnating. The goal of karma is to stop this process of reincarnation. And so the question comes is, how does one stop the cycle? If the goal is to stop it, then how should we stop it? If karma is what puts us in bondage, if we do good actions, we still have to come back to enjoy the result of that good activity. So even good karma is not so good because it brings us back in this world. And if we do bad karma, we have to come back to suffer it. So good or bad, karma puts us into bondage. So if karma is what puts us in bondage, then what breaks the cycle? And this is where this chapter comes in. This is why this chapter is so special, because the way to break the cycle of karma is what? Karma yoga. Karma yoga is the process by which we break the cycle of karma. That's why it's called karma yoga. Yoga literally means to link or connect. So karma yoga means to link through karma. The word yoga is the same as the English word yoke. Yoga is the same word as yoke, and yoke means to link or connect. So it's a linking process. Jnana yoga is yoga, the way to link to God through knowledge. Bhakti yoga is to link to God through devotion. Karma yoga is to link to God through action. So it is action that puts us in this world, that binds us to this world. But it is also action that breaks us, takes us out of this world and back to Krishna. But not just any action. So, how to break this cycle? Different traditions and different chapters of the Gita give us different methods of breaking this cycle. We saw in chapter 2, also later on chapter 4, the next week, we'll see that Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga, detachment, helps us break the cycle. So many traditions of the world, like for example, even Buddhism, they say renounce the world, give up desire, because it reduces our bondage in this world. Then many traditions say that good works or purification, which is karma kanda, you're acting, but according to the rules of Shastra, according to the rules of the Vedas, that breaks the cycle. In this chapter, Krishna tells us karma yoga breaks the cycle. And then he tells us in this chapter and in future chapters that bhakti yoga really breaks the cycle. So these are all methods of breaking the cycle and bondage of karma. Just like they say, you pull out a thorn with a thorn. Karma is what binds us in this world, and it is through karma that we get free from this bondage. But now the question is that if bad actions bind us, and if good actions bind us, then what breaks the cycle? Even if I do good works, which I said here, I still have to come back to this world. I still get bound. So how do I break the cycle? And this is the message of this chapter, that not just any action breaks the cycle, but nishkam karma yoga. When we're not acting for ourselves, when we're acting for God, which is bhakti yoga, then we can break the cycle. If karma is what binds us to this world, then someone will say, well, no action, then I should not act. If action binds me in this world, I should not act. That's the way to break the cycle. But Krishna tells us in the Gita that it's not possible not to act. It's impossible not to act in this world. Even not acting is a form of acting. So then how do we break the cycle? We can do it not by not acting, but by acting in devotion. That is the way to not act, but also act. Just like Prabhupada gives a very nice example. He says how, think about a soldier. A soldier fights in a battle, and in the battle, he may kill many people. And when the soldier comes back, this soldier gets a purple heart. He gets honored. But then that same soldier takes the same gun and he goes on a city street and he kills one person. And when he does so, he's hanged. He gets capital punishment. So Srila Prabhupada says, what is the difference between these two situations? In the first one, he killed so many people, but he got a purple heart. And in the second one, he just killed one person and he's hanged. The difference is that in the first one, he's not acting on his own desire, but he's acting on the instruction of the commander or the government. He's acting on the instruction of someone beyond him. So if there is a karma, if there is a reaction, it doesn't go to him, it goes to the person above him. In the second case, he's acting on his own desire, on his own whim. In the same way, if we're acting for our own sense pleasure, for our own material happiness, we have to incur the good or bad karma. But if we act for God, if we act for Krishna, truly for him, not for us, but in his name, but actually for Krishna's pleasure, and we act according to Krishna's desire, then we are karma free because Krishna takes that reaction. And the best way to do that is to act out of love, which is bhakti yoga. And therefore, karma yoga, action done for God, is bhakti yoga. Because if we're truly doing it for God, we will do it out of love. And that love is called bhakti yoga. So here is text 9 of chapter 3, where Krishna is bringing us from the level of fruit of action, karma kanda, to karma yoga, or action for God. And this verse is here. Yagyarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So Krishna is telling us the secret on how to be free from bondage. This is exactly what we've been talking about, right? Karma, and how to, this bondage is so terrible. Karma is real. We suffer so much in this world because of bondage, because of reactions. But Krishna here is telling us that process by which we can always remain free from bondage. How is it? That perform your work not for yourself, but for Vishnu, as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Because then it will not cause bondage, but if we don't, it will cause bondage. Perform your prescribed duties for Krishna's satisfaction. If we like to dance, then let us dance for Krishna. Don't go to a disco hall, to a dance hall, and dance there. That will cause bondage. It causes so much bondage. But rather dance for Krishna. If we like to play music, don't play materialistic music, but play music for God, for Krishna. In the beginning of creation, says text 10, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So in the next text, Krishna tells us that, look, I've given a process by which you can be happy. Spirituality or religion doesn't mean leading a very painful life, an austere life where you can never be happy and you have to, always be suffering. No, we deserve to be happy. But if we want to be happy, then every action that we do in this world needs to be an act of sacrifice. It needs to have some aspect of sacrifice in it. And this is the amazing part of Vaishnav culture and about the spiritual knowledge, spiritual culture, that it's designed in such a way that we can enjoy, but that enjoyment is always regulated. And what does regulated mean? That some aspect of that enjoyment will be a sacrifice. So every act we have to think, has to in some way be a sacrifice. So if we go on a nice vacation, let's say, that's like the most pleasurable thing. One of the most pleasurable things people do is we go on a vacation, right? The vacation is all about me. It's all about us. It's our family, me, all that. Right? Well, Krishna says some nice temples, so that same vacation, if as part of that vacation we try to serve God by seeing the holy places, by seeing a temple, by visiting a place of worship. Then in text 13, he says, the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So one of the most karmic things that we do is eating. I mean, we don't realize it. It's actually the deepest urge that a person has. I mean, we can live without other types of pleasures, but food we need 3 times a day or 2 times a day. And even if we don't get any other happiness, if we get good food, we feel like, we feel satisfied. Food is such a big thing in this world. We work for food. All the restaurants are for food. It's something very karmic. And people get a lot of karma as a result of food also, because most people are not vegetarian. And so food almost becomes the most karmic
Krishna Prabhuji
thing. And even if you are vegetarian,
Prabhu,
you're killing so many plants, insects. Maybe you're taking, yes.
We are not able to hear you clearly. But again,
Okay.
we see that some network issue.
Okay.
But please keep going, Prabhuji. It's okay.
Okay. Maybe this will help now. Food is a very karmic thing. But Krishna is telling us here that if we offer our food to Krishna, then that same food will become an act of sacrifice. That same food will purify our heart rather than becoming karma. But if we're going to offer it to Krishna, and if Krishna is going to accept it, then it has to be food that Krishna eats, right? It can't be food that he doesn't eat. So then in the Gita, Krishna tells us what type of foods he eats. Foods that are vegetarian, that are wholesome, that are not too hot, that are not too pungent, that are not too salty, but rather foods in the mode of goodness, right? So if we eat foods that are offered to Krishna, that are in the mode of goodness, then we become free from sin. We become free from bad karma. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna sambhava yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhava. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So this is the process of how to be joyful in this world. When there's a shortage of rain, it means that sinful activities have become too much in this world. And no sacrifices are being performed. Sacrifice, we tend to think of a fire sacrifice. But sacrifice means any sacrifice, anything that we do for God. And in the Gita, Krishna tells us what is the highest sacrifice. He says, Yajnanam japa yagyosmi. Among all sacrifices, I am japa, or the chanting of God's holy names. So when it's not raining, and this can be seen literally or symbolically, when good fortune is not coming to us, we're not being bestowed by wealth and prosperity and happiness or anything that is lacking, it is because of the lack of yajna. And yajna is what? The most important yajna is yajnanam japa yagyosmi. It is chanting the holy names of Krishna. So when we chant the holy names of Krishna, that is sacrifice. Then Krishna becomes pleased. And Krishna is saying yajna is born of prescribed duties. By performing prescribed duties, we become fixed in yajna. So this is an important point here that's being mentioned, that we must perform action, we must perform activity. And that activity should be for Krishna. And when we do it as a sacrifice for Krishna and for his devotees and for others, then our lives and our activities become purified. Now, in the interest of time, I'll skip a few slides and I'll just go to the last part, which is here, the third one that we talked about. So we talked about, Krishna said, work in devotion is better than renunciation in work. Krishna talked about karma yoga and how karma yoga is the way to break the cycle of karma. And now the third thing that I'd mentioned, that Krishna says, be aware. Now, while performing karma, be aware of lust and anger. So that is our last part. And just in a few minutes, I'll cover that. And that'll conclude our chapter. So Arjuna asks, you have explained that one must always do his duty. Still, it is very difficult. There's something that forces one to abandon duty and act sinfully, even against his will. What is that force? So a paraphrase of text 36 is this, where Arjuna is saying, okay, I understand work in devotion, perform my duty, act in Krishna consciousness, but there's something that stops me from doing this. What is it that stops me? Even though I know what the right thing to do is, I cannot do it. And Krishna answers that it is lust, Arjuna. It is lust only that covers the living entity and forces him into sin. Lust is therefore our ultimate enemy. It is very powerful. It can devour everything in the world, yet still remain hungry and strong. Right? Simply out of lust, people will go and kill someone else or cause harm and take the risk of spending the rest of their life in prison. So Krishna is telling us, be aware of this. Don't allow this lust to increase. And Krishna tells us the method. He says that lust starts with contemplation. Don't contemplate on the objects of the senses. Stay far away from them. Don't even go near it. Once we're too close with the objects of our senses, then it's very difficult to become free of it, to extricate ourselves. Just like once a person is addicted to drugs, it's very hard to come off of drugs, like marijuana, all these things. So therefore, the intelligent person doesn't come close to it. They control their urges by stopping the contemplation of that urge. So we should not contemplate material things, but we should contemplate spiritual things. How can one gain victory over lust? To conquer an enemy, one must know where he hides. Lust hides in the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So it hides in the senses, in the mind, and the intelligence. It starts with the senses. So don't become sensual. Rather, focus your intelligence on the purpose of life. What is the goal of life? I have to get out of this material world. I have to find the truth. As Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. I have to realize my true self. I need to become eternal, or we are eternal, but realize eternal life. This life is temporary. So what's the point of amassing things in this world? That's not the goal of my life. My goal is to find the eternal world. Since the senses are the weakest, they are the easiest place to begin conquering lust. Destroy lust in the senses by following religious regulations. And therefore, once again, karma yoga. By performing activity in a regulated way, in a spiritual way, by performing our prescribed duties, our dharma, as prescribed by Krishna, the most important being our parodharma, our service to Krishna, our spiritual surrendering to Krishna. By following these religious regulations, which the scriptures so painstakingly give to us, we can advance in life. We can become self-realized. So even the simple rules and regulations are very important. Why? Because they take us towards sattva gun, towards goodness. And goodness is the launching pad to spiritual life. Vegetarianism, compassion, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. These things elevate our mind and senses so we can think of God. And therefore, Krishna says, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So only by spiritual strength we can do this. We need spiritual strength. And the process of spiritual strength is the process of spiritual life, beginning with hearing and chanting. We must get this spiritual strength, and that will give us the strength to conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. All the self-help videos, all the counselors and mentors, they don't know the solution. They can't give us the strength to follow the right path. But spiritual life can give us that strength. And that spiritual strength, we can become very strong through the practice of Krishna consciousness. By taking Krishna's holy names, by performing devotional service, by performing bhakti yoga, devotional activities for Krishna, we get that strength to conquer this lust. So I'll stop here. If there's any comments, questions, corrections, please share them.
Thank you, Prabhuji. We will open for question and answers. I have Radha Kunji Bihar Prabhu put a question in the chat. I'm going to read it for you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, is my voice still breaking up, or did it stop breaking up?
No, it is good right now.
Good, okay. That's the...
Video make big difference, I think.
Yes.
Radha Kunji Bihar Prabhu saying, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, there are two questions. I'm going to read both. Maybe you can answer together. First one, are demigods also under the jurisdiction of karma? Does karma, akarma, and vikarma also apply to them? Second one, is it true that liberation can happen only from the human platform and not from animal and or demigods platform?
Yes, so two very nice questions. So I mentioned about the animals, right? That how the animals are burning off the karma. The soul in the animal form is simply burning off his karma. So if we don't act properly in our human form of life, accordingly will become, a fortunate dog or an unfortunate dog, or, or how many lifetimes we have to go through. And so the animal just acts out of instinct. It doesn't do something good or bad. And in that life, it's just burning off its past karma. Now, in the case of the higher forms of life, higher than the human being, like in the case of the demigods, they also, very interestingly, are simply burning off their good karma. And that's why we read in the scriptures, the demigods, they sometimes perform wrong things or bad things, and they don't really get a reaction. They're still, still enjoying the heavenly planets. Why? Because they're simply burning off good karma. It's just like the example that I gave, that when we're home, that's when we're earning money, good or bad. But when we're on a vacation, that's where we're in Hawaii, it's like the demigod life, then we're simply spending the money. We're not getting more money. In the same way, in the demigod life, we don't get good or bad karma. So this is the first point. And also, why is this the case? Because demigod life has too much pleasure. It has a very high level of enjoyment. And therefore, a person with that high level of enjoyment almost loses his freedom, because the enjoyment is so great, we don't have the mental space to think about self-realization. Human life is special because we have just the right balance of happiness and distress. We don't have too much distress like the animal forms, where they're just always in fear, and therefore they cannot think of God. Or we don't have too much pleasure like the demigods, where it's also very difficult to think of God. Now, to your second question, can we go?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have a follow. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I have a follow-up question on the demigods thing. So we hear that Narada Maharshi in his previous life was a demigod. He was actually, in the heavenly planets, and then whatever. No, I'm sorry. It's not Narada Mahamuni. I'm talking about the two Kuvera sons.
Yes.
They actually incur a bad curse, and they come back to the human form, and then they again go back to this thing. So I was trying to understand, how did that happen if they don't have bad karmas and only good karmas? So,
yes, very nice question. So, so the one exception for that is curses. If demigods get curses, then they do have to get the reaction of those curses. And that's why the demigods, they are afraid of insulting the saintly persons or the brahmanas. They're afraid to do that. They're very respectful towards them, because, they don't get good or bad karma by the law of karma, but they do get the reaction of curses, because those are not exactly the laws of karma per se. Those are directly being, given by the sages.
Okay, that's the same thing that happened to the Ashtavasus.
Yes, they also got it. Yes.
Okay, Prabhu. Yeah. Now it is making sense. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I'll wait for the second one, Prabhu.
So now the second one, just very quickly, I'll say that, yes, sometimes in the demigod form, demigods can directly go from that planet back to the spiritual world. They can get liberation. Because Krishna consciousness is beyond karma. If they're very fortunate and they get the association of an advanced soul like Narad Muni, and they take the process seriously, they can go back home, back to Godhead they can gain liberation directly from where they are at. But generally speaking, they have to come back to the human form. Because even if they get that association, the enjoyment of sense gratification is so great that they become again attracted by that sense gratification. And so even the demigods, they pray to be born as a human being. This is how valuable our life is. And especially being born at this time in Kali Yuga, when Lord Chaitanya appeared and has given us the easy process to go back home, back to Godhead by chanting the holy names of Krishna and serving Krishna. So yes, it's possible, and they sometimes do. In fact, the residents of Brahma Loka are very, very advanced. And so most of them, in fact, all of them, go back to the spiritual world after that lifetime. But all the other demigods, they generally come back because they're too attracted by material enjoyment. They're not fully purified. Yes.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you for your wonderful talk today. It was very nice summarizing the entire thing. And I'll let others speak, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Prabhu, beautiful lecture. I just wanted to clarify or need more clarification on one thing about when we say that, when you go into the animal species of life, it's not always the case that you have to go through so many different births as animals and different species until a human, because I was thinking, going back to the deer, the Jad Bharat story, Bharat Maharaj story, and how he had to, he became a deer, but he didn't have to go through different species of life in order to get the human birth again. As you said, right, he was just probably trying to get rid of the karmas that he had built as the attachment to the deer when he was Bharat Maharaj. And then second example comes to my mind of Gajendra. So he was cursed by the
elephant.
Yeah. So he was cursed as Indradyumna Maharaj, right? By Durvasa Muni. So he also attained liberation right in the animal form right after it. So he didn't have to go through the different births and everything. So it's not always the case like that. It's just because it all depends on Krishna as well, right? Krishna had, and the great sages curses, as you've mentioned, because even though these two examples were in animal species, not necessarily they had to go through these different species in order to get to a human birth again. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, so very nice. Both of these souls were very advanced. So like Bharat Maharaj, he was actually a pure devotee. He made a mistake and he actually made an offense to his spiritual master. And that was the main reason why he had to take one birth as a deer. And the same thing with Gajendra, where he was cursed by a sage, but he's a pure devotee. And so he had to become an elephant for one lifetime. And then after that, he was free of it. The general case for just you could say every man, so, the materialistic person, the general case is that they generally need to take the long route because it's an evolution of consciousness, you see. So if in human life, we bring our consciousness to the platform of a deer or a dog, then gradually we work through our desires back to the human form. Now, you're right, it may not be 1,000,000 lifetimes, it could only be 1,000 or even 100. That we don't know. But the general case is that we go to a certain species and then we work our way back up to the human species. That's according to karma texts, like texts that talk about karma. This is the cycle that they talk about. But yes, it's not for everyone, especially for the devotees. If they make a mistake, they'll just have one life and then they'll come back.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for clarifying. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, when you were explaining about good karma and bad karma, the bank account, you used the word Sukruti. So I would like to know, because I had understanding that the word Sukruti exclusively means a karma balance or balance towards Krishna's, going towards Krishna. So is the word Sukruti applies for anything balance or just a karma?
I think the context is important. So generally, like you're saying, Sukruti is referred to as good fortune, and that the real good fortune is getting the mercy of the devotee and Krishna, and that's our sukriti, or performing an activity that leads to that, like unknown devotional service or devotional service that's done accidentally but becomes a great asset. But sukriti can also just mean good action. Sukriti, su means good, kriti means activity. So depending on context, that word can be used differently. So if we do good activities, we rise, we come more towards the mode of goodness, which may lead us closer to God. But sukriti is not enough, right? Just like goodness is described as the airport. We go to the airport to take the flight. But if we go to the airport and we just stay there, then we're still far away from our destination. We have to go to the airport and then take the flight. That is transcendental. That is beyond sukriti. That is beyond the mode of goodness. That is transcendental. So, akarma, okay, I'll mute my. And no action is only possible if we're acting. So it's even beyond good activity. Akarma specifically refers to action that breaks us, that activity that causes the cycle of rebirth to be broken. So yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Nice question, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Do we have a time for another question? One more?
Sure. Yes.
Prabhu, this is just to further answer that you gave about demigods and people in Brahma Loka, they go straight to the spiritual world. So, Prabhu, how about people in Shiv Loka or a devotee like Shiva?
So Lord Shiva has a very special role. Lord Shiva is not a living entity like us. The greatest Vaishnava, he is a partial incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So he's not a Jiva Tattva, he's not a living being. So someone like Lord Shiva is never not liberated. He's always liberated. He's an incarnation of the Lord. But many of his associates who live in Kailash, they may or may not reach the ultimate destination. Most of them, because of his direct contact, they do. They go, at the end of their life, they go back to the spiritual world. But some of them may or may not. Because Kailash is a very elevated place. It's like Brahma Loka, it's like Satyalok. The inhabitants of Satyalok and Kailash, they are more than demigods, they're saintly because of the direct association that they get of Lord Shiva. And in Brahma Lok, it's all sages, and Lord Brahma is also basically like a sage. And their whole full-time activity is meditation on the Lord. And because they're so powerful sages, this is why the demons, they never attack Kailash or Satyalok, because it's impossible. I mean, they know that no one can fight Lord Brahma. No one can fight the sages there. But the lower demigods, not exactly lower, but the normal demigods, like Indra and Varuna and all of their associates and all the Vasus and the Ashwini Kumars, they are more in this you could say enjoyment mentality. And so they pray to be born as a human being so that they can get the opportunity to focus on spiritual life in a way that they're unable to do in the heavenly planets.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Does anybody else have any other comments, questions for Prabhu? I don't see any questions on YouTube. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, thank you very much. I know we are over 13 minutes, but thanks for being patient and answering all the questions we have. Very nice to hear from you. You made it karma philosophy very easy. It is so complicated. Even Krishna says that, but you made it simple, saying, just do everything for Krishna. A simple sentence. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for inspiring us. Really appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you thank you for facilitating this. And this is a very nice series on the Bhagavad Gita. So I enjoy hearing them also. So thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Very nice it was.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Very
We
nice.
definitely want to hear more from you, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
More and more.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for joining. We will end.
Thank you.